Hi, everyone. I am Grace Johnson, the marketing manager here at Wheelhouse DMG. And today we are going to go through healthcare advertising in a privacy-first world, from challenges to champions. So looking at the agenda, we'll start with a quick introduction, cover the challenges in healthcare marketing. We'll conquer compliance, which is a few parts here. It's prioritizing collection of first-party data, collecting data differently, navigating platform restrictions, and conducting compliance checks. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A session. So if you see at the bottom of the screen here, there should be a little Q&A box. And if you have any questions as we're going through today, feel free to drop them in there, and then we can answer them at the end of the call. And what you'll gain today, insight into privacy challenges that healthcare marketers face across paid channels, approach HIPAA compliant marketing, receive a list of auto settings that could break compliance, guidance on first-party data in a full funnel marketing approach, and then we will dive into the inside scoop on how we are approaching platform restrictions and how you can as well. And I'll give a brief introduction here before we dive into the nitty-gritty. We are Wheelhouse. We have been delivering performance for privacy-first brands for more than 12 years. You can see some of our partners here. And we've been working with some of the world's most innovative brands for even longer. So while we focus very heavily on privacy and healthcare right now, that is not all that we do. So you can see some of our previous clients here as well. And a little bit about who we are. So we have a handful of services that we offer. However, I always like to say that we deliver the best performance and value for our clients when we approach all of our services together in our one wheelhouse approach. And that is part of what we're talking about here today. So with privacy and with first-party data, that kind of all ties into this one wheelhouse approach. And you have two excellent hosts to dive into content. You have Ernesto Frausto, who is a web analytics engineer. He brings over 8 years of experience to Wheelhouse, and he leverages his background in analytics and research to drive some pretty heavy data-informed strategies for us. And then Chelsea Keller will also be speaking. She is a senior digital advertising manager. You may have seen Chelsea on some of our previous webinars. She manages multi-million-dollar budgets here in medtech advertising, has been doing this for a while, and has a lot of great insights to share. So with that, I will hand it over to your host, and we can dive in.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to start by just setting the scene of basically where we're at currently. Cool. So the current state of healthcare marketing is a tightened regulatory landscape, which includes limitations on what data can be shared without a business associate agreement, or BAA, most commonly known as, which most advertising platforms won't sign, leading to organizations stripping their tracking implementations in the absence of a compliant tracking solution. So how did we get here? The challenges in healthcare marketing, they really started, a few years back with HIPAA. And if you don't know, I'll give you a quick, too long didn't read version. So HIPAA's mandated privacy and security measures aim to protect sensitive patient health information, or PHI. It sets standards that healthcare providers and covered entities must follow, and how this specifically applies to the web. Well, in 2022, there was more guidance as it relates to HIPAA of what basically anybody that has a website managing healthcare data has to follow. So the OCR, or the Office of Civil Rights, gave further guidance as it applies to HIPAA and web-based tracking technologies. So the bulletin extends HIPAA coverage to any individually identifiable information created or received by a HIPAA-covered entity that relates to the past, present, or future physical or mental condition of an individual that is transmitted or maintained in electronic media or in any other form or medium. This also extends to the ability of a third party to develop PHI by combining new information with what is already known about a user. Obviously, that's pretty broad and leaves a lot of room for interpretation. So, having the strictest interpretation of that is also crucial to maintaining compliance. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Chelsea.
Thanks, Ernesto. So these policies have been increasing because protecting user information is really the backbone of policies. And so limitations that healthcare marketers in particular are facing are quite distinct. The first being is that we struggle to find sourcing relevant audiences. And the cost for acquiring those audiences is higher because you're trying to find such a niche market. And we're also forced into a reactive state in a lot of ways. When policies change, we have to pivot. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to get out of a reactive state and more into a proactive state. So let's dive into some specific platform restrictions that healthcare marketers face. And then later in the presentation, we'll talk about how to overcome those. So the first is Google and Microsoft Ads. They both prohibit certain keyword targeting, such as specific pharmaceutical brands, addiction services, weight loss, as well as any kind of implication of direct health targeting. When I say direct health targeting, it's any use of your conditions, your symptoms in your ad copy, so always avoid that. You're also prohibited from creating and running any remarketing lists that use your first-party data because we want to protect that user information. And then there is a reduced amount of available contextual audiences that are relevant to health. Google has had these policies in place for some years now, whereas Meta has been rolling out policies over the more recent years. When in 2022, they disabled their health-related interest targeting after that OCR bulletin was posted. And then just last month, Meta restricted certain pixel events from being collected by health advertisers. So, and that's to limit the passback of any potential user personal health information. And so as an effect of that, we're no longer able to create retargeting audiences or lookalike audiences based off of that conversion data. So with Meta, we've had to shift away from lead driving bottom of the funnel targeting and more into mid and upper funnel targeting. And so when it comes to programmatic DSPs, you do face similar limitations. There's only certain audiences, targets that are available that are relevant. And so you really have to do your research on sourcing those from top third-party audiences such as IQVIA, Purple Lab, PulsePoint, Crossix. These are all health related or have health specific audience segments that you can look into. And then similar to the other platforms, you are restricted on curating any kind of custom audience that indicates a health condition. And that's regardless of whether it is from a first-party data source or a third-party data source. So with all of these restrictions, we are going to talk about how to market or how to conquer marketing in a compliant way. And the way to do that, way to conquer compliance is to be proactive. How can we be proactive? There's going to be a couple things we're going to dive into. The first being prioritizing the collection of your first-party data, collecting that data differently through server-side tracking, and then we'll talk about how to navigate these platform restrictions and conduct regular compliance checks so that you make sure that you're not passing back any information that's sensitive. So let's talk about first-party data. First of all, what is it? First-party data is information collected directly from your audiences or customers through your own channels. This is data that you own. And capturing this data provides better insight into audiences, personas, and targets, and really helps inform your strategies and drive optimization. And we'll talk to you about specific examples of how we've done that. Examples of first-party data. So I'll walk through a couple different areas that you can start to collect first-party data. First, from your CRM, there may be opportunity in there for measuring lead quality, the conversion rate, new patient starts, conversion value, lifetime value, geography. You can look at on-site engagement. How are people using your page? What pages are they going to? How are they engaging with the content on your site? How are they using the navigation button, and what are they searching for most on your site? These will all give you insights into how to operate your site to increase the awareness in your user journey. You can also look at user testing. So user testing are qualitative assessments. Usability tests and A/B tests are two examples of that. And really the idea is to take these assessments from users to measure how effective your on-site experience is for potential new users. You can also look at social commentary. So on your ads and posts in different social platforms, are there keyword trends? Are people asking questions over and over, or providing a certain sentiment? These can all guide what topics you speak to in your ad copy and on your website. And then another example is video views. If you have a video on your website, let's measure view rate, and completion rate. How much of that video are people watching? That gives us a level of engagement. So let's apply these to a real life example. I've provided one client's use of their first party data using these examples. So with their CRM data, we use UTM parameters on our ads. Those UTM parameters pass back to their CRM, so we're able to associate back a conversion, their conversion quality and the value back to specific campaigns and ads, so we can optimize our budgets towards those top performers. We also want to capture as relevant audiences as we can. So we have built lookalikes off of product page viewers, any top kind of page that drives a lot of engagement. And we also assessed what pages were most searched so that we can optimize the navigation bar and get users where they want to go faster and hopefully improve that conversion rate. User testing. So we measured how effective our marketing landing page was at capturing our top selling points, and we used a usability test for that. We also did an A/B test of 2 different marketing landing pages to improve conversion rate. We use a social listening tool to measure keyword trends in our social comments on our ads. And that helps us get a guide on what's resonating with the audience, what they care about, and helps drive our ad copy. And then we built out audiences of those who have viewed videos on our site so that we target those with more similar content because they show that they're an engaged audience. So all of these are ways we enhance our targeting and optimization capabilities. But what I want to talk next about is how we look at collecting that data. And Ernesto is going to talk to us about that.
Cool. And we could hop to the next slide. Awesome. So to help tackle the privacy restrictions marketers are facing today, we recommend having a unified first-party data strategy implemented through a server-side tracking setup. Server-side tracking gives you enhanced data privacy and control by minimizing dependency on third-party cookies and by increasing data flow transparency, ensuring you know and control exactly what's collected, shared, and stored. This setup also gives you streamlined measurement and improved accuracy by reducing data loss from browser-based blockers. This also unifies attribution under consistent first-party insights, eliminating conflicting platform-specific models. Lastly, server-side implementation can be future-proof and lets you create a customer-centric approach to your data collection. So as laws change, what you can collect and share might also change with those laws. And once you have that control that server-side gives you, it's going to be easier to adapt to those changes. Lastly, I also want to mention that this approach isn't just about the risk mitigation. It's also a way to center your marketing around things that you know about your best customers and improve the performance of your campaigns overall. So needless to say, healthcare industry is not the only one that could benefit from a server-side setup. Next, I'll just show you at a super high level how server-side tagging works. So what it does, it routes data collection and processing through a dedicated server. It captures incoming data from the browser, processes in the server container, and then forwards it to various marketing and analytic endpoints. So basically right here where you see the server container tile, that's where you can make all the changes, strip any data you might want to not send to additional platforms. And before it gets sent over. Whereas on the client side, it goes straight from the browser to these platforms in the form of pixels that you deploy on the client side browser. Next slide, please. Thank you. A server-side implementation combined with a unified first-party data strategy has the added benefit of enabling the creation of an all-encompassing first-party data warehouse. This allows you to send all user data to a HIPAA-compliant database while limiting what is sent to third-party ad platforms. This warehouse provides a secure environment for probabilistic attribution models like MMM or marketing mix modeling. It can also help you avoid dependence on platform-specific reporting, which typically has some limitations. Lastly, this database can help you recoup some of the optimizations lost to privacy regulations and platform-specific policies. Few things to consider. Effective implementation requires both proper governance and financial investment. Organizational change is crucial to maintaining compliance. This is not a set once and forget about it. You really have to change at the organizational level to think about compliance regularly, not just about setting up a server-side first-party strategy and then forgetting it. Additionally, there are cost considerations. Server-side requires a server, which is typically not free. And if you want a database to collect and house your data, you typically will also incur warehousing fees. Obviously, you could still be compliant, but the trade-off usually is campaign performance, because now you can't send data back to platforms and you can't collect that data.
Thanks, Ernesto. So while first-party data strategy resolves HIPAA compliance and a loss of attribution modeling, platforms are still going to restrict the data that you're able to send to them. So we still need to rethink lead optimization approach. So we'll walk through what that looks like. First, we need to think about micro conversions and driving towards engagement. We can focus on video views, post engagement, page views, and clicks. And we can also, as I mentioned in that example, use user testing to improve page performance via conversion rate optimization. Because not only are you now driving a lot more eyeballs on your ads, but you're also sending a lot more traffic to the site in these types of engagement campaigns. And so you really need to think about how that page performs with the variety of traffic that you have sending to it. So as part of a case study on our, we replaced leads when we lost them on Meta with a new approach that I wanted to walk you guys through. So the problem is that we have been restricted on web events that limit our ability to collect and optimize towards leads. Without this, we have an inevitable lead loss and rising CPLs. So our solution was to at least mitigate some of that loss. We optimized towards a view content event using someone viewed a page of one of our top converting pages. We chose the top converting page because we knew a lot of qualified traffic was on that page that we could then have the platform optimize off of. What ended up coming up as a result, we looked at our CRM data and we did see, as expected, our CPL did go up, but what we found is it didn't go up as much as it could have, and that's where the win lies. We did see a 20% increase in our CPLs when we lost our leads, but using this view content, the page that we selected had a higher quality score in terms of the leads that were coming through than our previous page. And so by using that higher quality page, we had less of a reduction in our CPLs. So our CPLs would have been roughly 2 times higher had we not used that new page. So this just reiterates, test new events, test your pages, and check out usability and through user testing to measure the effectiveness of those pages. You also want to think about diversifying your marketing channels, particularly now that we're not just driving towards lead events in Meta, thinking about how you can be present, not just remaining in that platform, but expanding out and really making sure you have a brand presence across search, social, native, video, display, CTV, and more. What is going to be really impactful from a measurement perspective is using your first-party data to report holistically. So rather than relying on different attribution models by different platforms, using your first-party data strategy, you can have one attribution model that ensures accuracy and consistency. You should also think about viewing your budget differently. So we've got two scenarios on the right-hand side here. The first scenario takes you with the total amount of media spent, total number of conversions, and your CPL. The CPL here is at $15 for a $15,000 ad spend. In scenario B, what I've done is aligned the budget to the campaign optimization that you're driving for. So in this example, it's spend on clicks. So I've split out the amount of spend on conversion-based campaigns and calculated my CPL. And that comes out to a $10 CPL, and then split out what we spent on traffic campaigns, divided that by the event that we set out for in that, which was clicks, them gaining a CPC. And the reason to do this is more from a leadership perspective, being able to show that your CPL is not as inflated as it looks, that you're doing audience acquisition, and there's a cost to that that's different than just lead conversion. Additionally, as we are looking at broader audience targets and really being more forced into broad audience targeting, we have to think about how to leverage our creative differently. And so there is this concept of approaching creative as the new targeting. And the way to do that is to really have a large repository of diverse assets that range from a product-focused ad, something that is higher, like it's produced professionally, and then something that's more of a user-generated content, are all examples of how one brand has done that on the right-hand side. And what we find is that when you do have on Meta as an example, when you do increase the number of assets you have, you see a higher engagement rate. So for this one client example, the US branch increased their paid social assets 35% in 2024 over 2023, and they saw a click-through rate improvement of 28%. Their international counterparts did not increase their assets year over year, and they saw a declining click-through rate from ad fatigue. So this just reiterates the importance of keeping really fresh content, diverse content that relates to a lot of different audiences as you're really reaching a large audience pool. Okay. And finally, one other way to conquer compliance is to conduct regular compliance checks. So this is a way you can be proactive, and as a practice that we do on a monthly basis here at Wheelhouse. There are certain settings within ad platforms that are either auto-enabled or could be enabled that we check for that may compromise compliance by collecting things such as unique IDs, names, emails, etc. And so we have those listed out here. With Meta, we've got advanced auto matching, Microsoft Clarity, Google Enhanced Conversions, and Google Analytics 4 with their Google signals. And so what we do is once a month, we go through a checklist. We use Google Forms. You can build this out there. And we look at these settings. And if there's any setting that is on that shouldn't be on, if we mark yes, it's an indicator to us that we have to elevate that alert to our compliance team. And so as a special offer to those who are interested, we do have this as a handout post webinar to allow you to go and check your settings and make sure that you are compliant. Wonderful. And with that, we'll move into our question and answer portion, and happy to answer any questions you guys have around compliance, ad restrictions, first-party data, etc.
Awesome. Thank you both. So like Chelsea said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box below. I did see some come through as we were running through our presentation. First question we have, let's see. It looks like first-party data is tricky at my organization. So who should I be pulling in, like as far as stakeholders are concerned, to start having these conversations?
Typically, what we like to do is basically kind of list all the first party data that we're collecting. And it's not necessarily that you're collecting it right, assuming that you're doing it in a compliant way. It's, having those safeguards in place. So if to maintain HIPAA compliance, there's kind of like a checklist of things to do, limit the people who have access to it. But also, I would say the most important thing is kind of auditing all the data you're sharing outside of your organization. So any digital advertisement platforms, highlighting that, and the specific parameters that you're sharing with them. I would start there. So typically whoever's managing, say, your digital marketers, they'll probably have a good idea of what platforms are in play there. And yeah, I would say that's a good place to start.
Thank you, Arnie. All right, this one looks like it's more towards Chelsea. It says, my company won't fund brand awareness, but you had pointed out that it's specifically pretty important. So do you have advice on further proving the value for brand awareness?
Sure. So we face this a lot because it's hard to attribute leads directly back and show that value. And so what are ways that you can do that? Thinking about micro conversions as a good place to start. So is there something on your site that you can set your campaigns to optimize towards that aren't leads? Maybe it's a subscription to a newsletter. Maybe it is a video view. Maybe it's a download. Those are different events that you can do on your site to optimize towards that, one, show engagement, and two, can also nurture a lead that isn't necessarily directly a lead in a form. The other optimization events that I would look at is driving traffic. That is, we've got brand awareness where you are looking more for reach and eyeballs on your ads, but you can also optimize more towards driving that traffic, driving engagement. And so with that traffic, what you want to do is measure cost per click, click-through rate, click volume as a secondary KPI when you lose out on those leads.
Awesome, thank you. All right, another question. Can privacy-centric marketing approaches still deliver hyper-targeted results, or is there always going to be a trade-off between precision and compliance?
Do you want me to tackle that one, Chelsea?
You seem to have something important to say, so I'm curious.
Yeah, unfortunately, right, the data that makes it so that you could hyper target an audience is typically data that would fall under this PII or PHI, right? So to give data to these platforms is inherently in violation, especially if they don't sign a BAA. If we ever find a platform that does sign a BAA, then and they can use that data to target users or visitors, then it would be in compliance. But unfortunately, usually that is not possible.
Yeah, and from the ad platform perspective, in terms of any health relevant audiences, they are very lacking. And so it is a matter of one or the other. Yes.
Can you tell me more about building an audience of video viewers and how you better engage with them? And what does that look like?
Oh, sure. So if you have videos on your site, I believe, Ernesto, what we do for ours is we set up an event for the trigger play button, if I'm not mistaken. And we measure video views in GA4. And what we see from that is view rate, engagement rate on or completion rate, excuse me. In Meta, the way that we use that is we set up that event and optimize towards video views. So there's an option for when you're building your audience, what percentage they're watching of the video. And it goes from like 25% watch, 50, 75, and 99. And with that, we are currently testing out different view rates and the conversion that comes out of that using our CRM. But you can also, now what we're going to do as a step 2 is retarget those who have watched that video. So your first seed audience is video viewers. And we are sticking with more the like watched 50 to 75% because that shows us that they watched the content, they're engaged. And then from there, then we're retargeting those audiences again with more direct call to action ads.
Thank you. And we have one more question here. Has the shift toward privacy-centric advertising affected campaign ROI for healthcare clients specifically? And if you are seeing that, how are organizations addressing that challenge?
Yes, we are seeing that, which is the premise of what the content we brought to you today is, because these restrictions are in place, they do impact ROI. What are ways we can combat that as best possible? And truly, the first step I recommend is talking to your leadership very transparently about the barriers that you face, because it will take heavier investment for the same amount of gains.
Yeah, and I will add to that. This is kind of where that first-party database comes into play. Obviously, it does require a lot more data maturity, more investment, as Chelsea specified there. But once you have all the data in a first-party sense that is compliant, then you could run advanced modeling on that, and you could feed that data back in aggregate to some of these platforms, so they could basically narrow down your audience. What you can't do is feed the user-specific data that of those, users that converted, for example. You can't feed that back to the platforms. But if you give them a list of characteristics, then they could optimize off that.
Perfect. Thank you both. That seems to be it for our questions here. But if you leave this call and a question pops up, or you are thinking about it and want to talk through the subject matter further, feel free to reach out to either myself, Ernesto, or Chelsea. We will be sharing this recording with you in the next few days. It will be available and we will email it out. And if you would like to receive that compliance checklist, again, feel free to reach out. We are more than happy to send that your way. Thank you, Chelsea and Ernesto. We appreciate you all taking the time to join.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your day.